Good morning and welcome. This morning's Dharma talk is titled Normal Awareness, Normal Awareness, Ordinary Awareness. But before I go into that, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, for participating in this practice and in this community, and for all of your help, both just by participation and also for your financial support, which we need to continue to move along and be a spiritual community. So thank you for all of that help that you've given us. And please continue to help us if you can. So normal, ordinary, every day, just the same awareness that walks down the hallway, the same awareness that keeps you from bumping into walls, the same awareness that hears birds outside the window, the same awareness that when you're brushing your teeth, you notice that maybe one side of your gums is a little more tender than the other side. Normal, ordinary, every day, ordinary, and at the same time, extremely rare and unusual. Same thing, same time, same place, same station. Tune in, or as they used to say in the 60s. Turn on, tune in, and drop acid. No, turn in, tune on. Is that it?
Tune out.
Huh?
Tune out.
And tune out. Yes. So ordinary, pardon the stroke here. What I'm trying to point out here is that no matter if you train your mind, and it takes a long time, unlikely to happen in just a few years. Possible, but unlikely. This can happen without any mind training. It looks like there's a few people that have spontaneously realized their true nature. Looks that way. I don't know. You check in with anybody. There's no test for that. There's no way to check. The only one you can really check on is yourself. You can find out here. You can't find out there. You can't find out anything out here. That doesn't mean you shouldn't receive everything. Just if you can, don't particularly evaluate it and make it into some special thing that should be stopped, some special thing that should be grasped, some special thing that should be ignored or turned away from. Passion, aggression, and ignorance. There again, over and over again, this will constantly show up in your awareness practice. Ordinary. That's normal. If you train your mind to see clearly, doesn't mean that you won't get really upset when some things happen, or really delighted when other things happen, or maybe somewhat bored or disinterested when other things happen or come either outside in the so-called outside world or in the mind stream. But they will be received, if you've trained your mind, they will be received with normal awareness. You may have really intense emotional reactions to something in the mind stream, but the awareness is just normal. It doesn't do anything. The awareness does not run away from what shows up. It does not grasp what shows up, and it does not reject or ignore or fight with it, however you want to say it. It doesn't do anything with it, but it may really, really feel it. It just doesn't turn it into some kind of a reason to react or reason to outflow or reason to blame. Reason. The whole world is doing this. You don't have to do that, but you may have to do it for a while until you begin to see that that is an actual outflow, that you are actually generating some shit that you're throwing on everybody. Or maybe you're throwing it back on yourself. Anything for a reference point. Ego wants a reference point, and it will generate whatever it can to make sure that ego continues to somehow survive as being the one who's right, the one who's wrong, or the one who is disinterested. And all the nuance. It's all over the place. Lots of nuance. Lack of reference point in location or time. The Tibetans even have a word for that, Tamogishepa, means ordinary mind. Tamogishepa. And I think that shows up in Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. And then right after that, Trungpa said, well, that's kind of a secret teaching, so I'm not going to talk about that. But why is it a secret teaching? Because he doesn't want you to jump the gun and be, which is a phrase he used quite a bit. I'm not sure why. To try to be something rather than be aware, to be a person who has an ordinary mind. Makes nothing special to them. Ego. I'm just looking on the screen here and in the Zendo to see who's visiting here on this Sunday. I'm not particularly taking role. I'm just curious about who's here, who's not here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, mine. I have some people here also on YouTube.
Yes, who are they?
Ross has bowed in. Annie. Tom McCauley.
Annie Logovitz.
Yes, I
Thank you.
think it's an L.
Hmm?
It's the last
That's
name.
probably her. She's been showing up lately.
And Jeremy Gray.
Okay, thank you. Anybody showing up anywhere else? Is anybody showing up in your mind that is not here? My mom just showed up. I don't know why she showed up. She didn't have much interest in this, or at least did not. Yes,
Unya Bowing, are you taking questions?
well, that's a question. We'll take that one. Yes,
Unya Bowing,
got to be ordinary. Normal.
is there abnormal or extraordinary?
Yes, it's the same thing. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's the same dynamic. Something shows up and we're aware of that. We're aware. The way we know about awareness is there are objects, sound, smell, taste, touch, hearing, feeling, thinking, show up in that area we call consciousness. So we're aware of them. And sometimes instead of being aware of what shows up, we're aware of what we think it is. We project onto it, a good thing, a bad thing, not shouldn't be happening. They shouldn't have said that, done that. Instead of just receiving it as it is so that it can just be normal. You just receive it. The world is full of all kinds of energy going this way and that way and this way and that way. You can't have a world unless you have a lot of polarity. It's just in the biological situation. I'm not a biologist, but you don't need to be one to see that you need all these polarities in order for there to be even a digestive tract. But what happens is this gets into the mind stream and we start to identify as a solitary, singular being separate from everything else, using the body as a support. It's not your body, it's none of your business, because there is no your. Please.
Unya Bowing, what is the middle way between ordinary and extraordinary, if there is one?
It's just this. Wouldn't have a dynamic. You wouldn't have anything you could name. You couldn't name it. If you named it, you've left it. We have names. We have a clock, so we don't get the clock mixed up. with a coffee cup, that we have names so we can navigate our everyday life. More about that, please don't stop.
I'm thinking of the word normal or normalize.
Mhm.
I know the word shows up, not to get political, but in Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny,
Yes,
and he talks about how when there's a big radical change,
yes,
that it tends to normalize when people begin to just not think too much about it. So in this, I'm sorry,
ignore it.
and then it gets woven into
Yes,
the everyday life, more or less. So on the
Like
spiritual path, what
like the Nazis doing what they were doing, people just started ignoring that people were, those smokestacks over there were people being burned, the people over here. What was the name of that movie? Very disturbing movie about uh, Rudolph Hess and his family living right next to Auschwitz. And just having ordinary, the whole movie is just about them and their interchange, social thing like that. And occasionally you heard yelling coming across the fence and you saw the smokestacks, but they never really mentioned anything there too much. Normalize. Go ahead.
when you're bowing. So on the spiritual path, what is normalization?
So I'm not sure what you're asking. What do you want to know?
When you're bowing, well, and just what you just cited in terms of World War II,
Yes,
or we can bring it up today. We know what's going on in Gaza, or at least we think we do.
yes,
And yet we go about our normal lives.
you do.
So have we normalized that situation?
Somewhat. But the awareness that you're doing that is not exactly shutting it out, normalizing it from the point of view of ignorance. That's not that kind of normalizing. But what I'm saying, that anything that shows up in the mind stream, if it shows up in yours or anybody's mind stream, needs to be there. I'm not saying it needs it. I'm saying it's just dependent origination. So it's a way of understanding what happens in consciousness rather than attributing it's my thought or it's my emotion, or I have to stop thinking that, or I need to start thinking more. All of the manipulations that go on in the mind stream with anybody who's tied up in some kind of self-centeredness or narcissism, which is usually not obvious. It takes a spiritual path to really get your nose rubbed in this, the insane self-centeredness that you or me or anyone here is dealing with. It is not easy. It is not, you can't accomplish the spiritual path. More.
When you're bowing, I guess I'm looking for, in your title, you call it normal awareness. Is there?
It was Bobby's idea.
Is there?
Was, wasn't it?
All right, Bob.
Yeah. Bobby just got out of a 10-day solitary retreat. I thought, I haven't been in a retreat, so I don't know what to call it. So we kind of came in up with that. I think I came up with which part did I come up with?
Normal.
And then you came up with awareness. No help. I'm trying to get out of responsibility. So, did you have something to say about it? Because it seemed to resonate with you enough for me to feel like maybe I can give a talk on this. Which,
Bobby Valley, nothing that's.
it's the idea, it's difficult. It's just that whatever shows up eventually, as you go along, the boundary between sitting meditation in retreat or the extended practice of just watching what happens in the mind coming and going by not grasping, rejecting, and shutting down and getting off the cushion and interacting in your everyday life, even though very extreme things will happen, just like they do in your mind when you're sitting, events across the kitchen table or someone saying something to you or someone doing a certain thing or acting a certain way. It isn't that you're kind of artificially detaching yourself from anything, that creates more ego. Don't detach from anything. You don't need to be a detached ego. Who was someone who was above and aloof and never bothered by anything. How about that? Or not. Jason understands that. Don't you? Certainly do. Heartbreaking to see the people that will cover that up and wait for something to come up that they can get mad at instead of just have a fit right now. You have access to all these emotions. You have access to every human emotion. It's right here all the time. If you don't see it, then the world suffers. You need to see it. Be responsible for your mind stream. Now look and see how many people shut off their screen. Looks like everybody's still there. Good. Other than Annie. Is Annie Logabit still there?
I can't tell.
Okay. It's good, probably a good sign. So what am I saying by being outrageous or silly or stupid or expressive or putting on a show or what? I'm just trying to say that you don't have to cover anything up. You can fundamentally be genuine in the midst of the craziness of the world, the insanity of the world. This world is going nuts. It's been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. It's getting ready to take another cycle back into the insanity the way it's looking. But it might not matter too much because of the weather situation. You can't really kind of reverse that. Say, well, I'll vote the other way the next time. You can't, because the weather will end this whole celebration of being a living being. Not that it won't come back. Awareness. It's about awareness. It's about the awareness of what's happening without grasping, rejecting, and shutting down. Ordinary, so that when something does show up, instead of it being flooded with your preconception, your judgment, your ideas, your pushing, your pulling, everything, you actually can see, no, you actually need to move this. You need to step into this because you're doing it with the awareness, not with some kind of political position or religious position or spiritual teaching or something where you're going to do something, not do something, do this, not do that. You're operating out of your awareness, technically out of your Buddha nature or your awakened nature. Yes, sir.
Kabbalah, does responsibility normalize awareness?
If you use it the way I'm endeavoring to use it, being the ability to whatever shows up, you have a response or a respond. In other words, you receive it. If Mozoku raises her hand, I would call on her. So it's just a very simple, ordinary situation. Yes, sir.
Geez, is awareness the same on and off the cushion?
It is. It's the same. There's really no boundary between the two, but it looks like there's one. So that's why we're on the cushion. That looks quite a bit different than being at the kitchen table or getting in our car, looking around the parking lot, or trying to find our keys. We're actually looking for something on the cushion at some point until we eventually just receive what shows up on the cushion. And then you may go back to the cushion, you may not. More about it if you have it.
Geez, does awareness change?
Awareness doesn't do anything. Consciousness just receives. It doesn't produce nothing. But when it's doubled up in an apparent singularity called my hand, or my thoughts, or my viewpoint, my opinion, my judgment, my evaluation, then it tends to operate in terms of relative truth of this way, that way, up and down, back and forth, picking and choosing more.
Geez, is attention what changes on and off the cushion?
In other words, the awareness of thoughts coming and going and coming and going. You get off the cushion and you're aware of you're walking through a doorway or looking out a window. What are you asking?
Using volume. I think you said awareness is the same on and off the cushion, so I'm wondering what the contrast is.
The paranoia, the fear, the self-centeredness of that part of the consciousness that thinks they're separate from what they're looking at, separate from what they're smelling, tasting, thinking, feeling. Thinking there's someone else. I'm someone who's thinking that, shouldn't be thinking that. I'm someone who's feeling that, shouldn't be feeling that. Those kinds of political positions. Well,
Using volume. It seems like that kind of stuff shows up on the cushion as well.
does. Pardon me. Somewhat. But if you're sitting still on a cushion, then you're experiencing that just in consciousness. Whereas if you're moving around, then it's more like you as a person. There's more, to use the fancy relative term, objectivity on the cushion. You're more of an observing quality is happening in the consciousness. Ordinary. Normal. Just normal. Body, mind are not two separate things. They look like it. So when we slow down, hold the body very still without being rigid. No demand. Not talking about the way of coming up and threatening somebody with a stick if they move, or yelling at them if they move. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying you hold still, and you also are aware when you can't hold still, when you move or shift. So awareness is everywhere. There's just a very simple intention to hold still, and then also noticing how I might not be able to do that for very long. Awareness. More.
Using volume. Is the neurosis also ordinary?
In the way we're using the word, yes. Just ordinary. But it's not a conclusion. This is what a conclusion is. It's just ordinary. It's ordinary. It's just ordinary. And then you're not left with any reference point. That falls apart. If it's ordinary, then there's not a lot of contrast going on other than something that you would call extraordinary or special or hyper, some kind of hyper contrast. I really like questions. We have them. Yes.
When you buy, why would this be called a secret teaching?
It's an open, as has been said way before we all got here. It's an open secret because it's secret, but unless you look at it, unless it's pointed out to you, you're unlikely to see it because the mind is so busy and so speedy with its right and up and down. Should be, shouldn't be. Got to go here, got to go there, got to stop this, start that. That's why most of the world is doing this, looking for some kind of a foothold or handhold or something about what to believe in, what not to believe in. People go to places where societies and people in society will go to areas where they can find a reference point, something they can believe in, something they can hold on to. And I'm here to help you see that there is no reference point for anything. I'm here to help you as you're in a human form. I'm in a human form. This is unreal. And it's temporary, extremely. I'm looking at what I'm pointing at. And what am I seeing? Not much. Normal, just ordinary, nothing special. As it says in, whose book was that? Joko Beck's book, Nothing Special, I think. Okay, yeah. Mhm. Who named that book? Emma? Emma gave her that name. Ever first question?
When you buy, is there anything special?
Doesn't look like it.
Is awakening special?
Doesn't look like it. In the sense that we think of awakening, there actually isn't, in the sense that most people surmise that something happens where you suddenly awaken something, or something occurs that is misunderstanding. Nothing actually happens. It's the lack of something happening. After all this work, nothing has happened. You actually see who's in the mirror. Been there all since you were born. Let me see who it is. Any questions on Zoom?
Machine bowing. Is the word special associated with the ego, which is always looking for something special? Bowing.
Seems that way. If I understand the question, we're looking for something special, something else, something other, second noble truth. Whatever shows up, but we don't like that. We need something different, something bigger, something smaller. We're always picking and choosing, picking and choosing. Whereas whatever shows up, if you just receive whatever shows up, then normal. You just receive it. You just smell, taste, touch, hear, feel. You don't leave what you hear, smell, taste, touch, or what you think about it, or what it's about, or whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. This doesn't mean that some things won't smell good and some things won't smell spoiled or not so good. Of course, you have that kind of polarity. The world of illusion is created out of these polarities. Just like movies are created out of intense polarities, and we watch them for entertainment. Just like Dr. Mark here is writing novels. I think he's in his 5th one. It's on a screenplay, not right now, Dr. Mark. So he's inventing things, and he's going to get paid for it, millions of dollars, maybe. So, but we're inventing things. Anytime you walk across the room, you're inventing all kinds of things about the room, about your body, about how you feel, about how your clothes feel, about the sound that's outside the windows. We're just constantly dreaming up and creating. Everyone is a playwright. You just might not be recording it in the screenplay necessarily, but we're dreaming things up, giving them a reality that is reinforced by our reaction, our feeling, our emotional authority to back up something as it being true, or back up something. But each person is doing that in their own mind stream. And it's what's being said here is just watch that, observe that, and eventually see what is fundamentally the truth. And you'll stop taking a position on it, on everything. Unless you're functioning the way, when I come up here and sit, I take strong positions, if you haven't noticed. I might take them somewhere else too, but that's all secret, isn't it? So open secret just means that it's obvious. If you see this, if you are use any fancy word you want, if you realized or you understand or you see what this is, fundamentally, you have no questions about this. Now, what's to say that maybe you're Sokuzan, maybe you're just looking at your projections and you just happen to believe your projections. So there, because you want so much to be enlightened, that you just believe your projections, think, well, I must have realized something. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, so probably enlightened. How's it look to you guys? I get if I have a credential at all, I get it from you. I don't get it if this doesn't work or doesn't make sense on some level. I don't know what level is going to be different for each person. I'm not going to stay here and listen to this. Well, you might, but you might make fun of me or challenge me, which I quite often invite you to do. So what am I pointing at? I'm saying to you, each one of you, please socially distance yourself as much as you can. Turn to the wall, look to the wall, and watch the mind stream as it comes and goes and comes and goes. This is all I've done. I've done it in several different ways, according to whichever teaching I was working with. But the main one is just be aware of what's coming and going. So that you eventually see that you are not a solid, separate being from anything else. You're not, you have no separate identity. Yeah, and if you think you do, it's just unreal. So if you feel threatened, then you can look closely and see, is there anything really threatened? Am I really being threatened by anything? Even death, even though when the body drops away, as it does every night, you go to sleep, you haven't noticed. Sheen, I'll take another question, but it better be a good one. Don't start getting me all confused.
Jishin Bowling. Are we creating an illusion when we are naming things? Bowing.
Yeah, yes. Yes, we are. But to be aware that that's what you're doing, then you're not exactly fixated or tied in knots by it. You realize that you can change the name of things anytime you want to. Excuse me.
Thank you, Jishin Bowing.
Yes.
So what is that we are living when we are creating, when we are naming things? Bowing.
What is it that we're leaving?
Yes, you said that when you give a name, you are leaving it.
Yes.
So what is that it which we are leaving? Bowing.
If you don't understand the nature of dependent origination, and you think that things are separate from each other, then you're actually covering up the truth. You're covering up your true nature. But if you realize that everything is dependently arisen, I mean, not just thinking about it, then you know that you can't cover anything up. Everything you do is the Buddha. Everything that happens is the Buddha. Everyone you see is the Buddha. Everyone, every single one, the worst terrible person, we can name a few. I'm not going to, it's the Buddha. They might be terribly suffering and covering things up by torturing other people in order to cover up their own suffering. But their fundamental nature is liberation.
Thank you.
Deb.
Jeff Bowing. Verse 29 of the Vasubandhu says super mundane knowledge.
Yeah.
What is your take on the definition of super mundane? Like extra mundane or above mundane?
Yeah, don't give me too many
really
choices. Don't give me too many alternatives. I just get confused.
Sorry.
I get seasick. Too many words.
I'm just thinking about super
Just give me the
mundane.
question. Ask me the question. I can't wait. Can't wait any longer I gotta answer you.
Can you please tell me about super mundane knowledge in reference to your topic? Jeff Bowing.
Do you think it's sincere? What he's asking? Okay. So Chazan said it's okay to respond to you. I'm going to. And I will do it as clearly as I can. Mundane means ordinary, flat, plus and minus, up and down, back and forth, night and day. Mundane. I pick this up, I put it down, it makes a sound. It's made of wood. I'm over here, you're over there. Mundane, mundane. We make a living doing this. We're attorneys work out of this situation. Doctors, lawyers, and all kinds of, I guess those are also attorneys. People who build buildings, engineers. Mundane, mundane, but supramundane means above. It's just a relative way of pointing at something that's impossible to explain or talk about. However, I will say that it is a knowledge that is above the selectivity that the ego mind does to try to find a location in time or space, or right or wrong, up and down, back and forth. It is a wisdom that is consciousness only. This is what Vasubandhu was talking about. He was trying to point to something you can't even point at, because that which is doing the pointing is what is being pointed at. If you realize it, the work is over. And if you happen to function as a teacher, then everything is liberated. All of your craziness, all of the energy this way and that way, moving this way and that way, is liberated in the service of others. So you no longer have thoughts about it, and you don't no longer think about, should I say that? Or should I yell and scream? I don't think about that. I just yell or scream, or I don't. If that's bothersome to you, you know what I'm gonna say. Do whatever you want to do. You're basically much more free than you think that you are. You're liberated already. It's already the case. But the super mundane, it means that beyond the right and wrong, beyond the anger and the gladness or happiness, beyond the pain and the pleasure, beyond the relativity of actual life, of being alive. I'm alive right now, but not exactly. I'm also dead right now, and so are you. Beyond that, you're actually beyond the mundane. It's super mundane, and you can understand that yourself. If you're a human form, especially if you're listening to this old man talk, you're ready to see this. The thing that I'm saying that is important to remember is you're going to have to turn away from these words that are meant to encourage you. That's all I can do is encourage. And if my way of doing this is offensive, then you probably need to have a nicer person, nicer teacher. You don't need this kind of teaching. But I cannot help. I don't decide anything. Those days are gone. So, but I'm looking at this very clearly. I see it very clearly. I have no doubts. I have no questions about anything. I'm looking at the very thing that you are covering up. So, and I've said this before, and this if bothers people that sounds like I might know something you don't. Well, why would how could I teach if I didn't know a little bit? You don't know. You know it too. It's just that you think it's this or that, but it's not separate from anything. Super mundane. Beyond the mundane. But this is why it's so difficult, because even though it's beyond the mundane, it's not separate from it. So it is the mundane. That's why the monk returns to the marketplace in the 10 Oxfordine pictures. That's why after going in deep into emptiness, no self, no other, comes back to the marketplace, because there's still a heart beating there. There's still blood flowing there. There's still a digestive tract. Come back into the marketplace and actually see that this is the Buddha. This is the awakened truth, the very solidity of this earth. Further questions? Yes.
So Grand Valley, how does a practitioner release the pressure of an emotion?
How do they release it? By receiving it.
So Grand Valley, if the meditator is unable to receive it and it's building into an outflow, what is the next best thing?
Probably outflow. That's why you see, I'm trying to show you. I'm not saying I'm not here to give you permission to go and strike somebody or scream at someone or do something like that, but some area there that is being held down because there's something you don't want to look at.
So Grand Valley, by outflowing, do we look at it?
No guarantee. It's worse than that, and it's better than that. It's worse than that because there's no key that can unlock this lock. That's what it feels like. Isn't it like a lock? It's like, this does not let go. I can't seem to let go. Am I close to what you're feeling? I couldn't teach if I weren't looking at that myself. I couldn't sit up here. You wouldn't listen to me. You would go back and read Goenka or go back to your the way of meditating that you were doing when you met me. But you're still here. Have any plans to go in reverse? So, nor do I. There is no reverse. That's why I'm here. I will help you, much as it might not feel like it. Many of you who have talked to me very much are not going to necessarily feel helped by me at some time. Just thank you for the question. Just continue. The feelings, the emotions, and the stress and the pressure that starts to build up that may need to come out. Throw it at me. You know what I'm talking about. Naveed.
Navi bowing. Is the normalness you are talking about also refer to the first thought or the first action? Bowing.
Yes. What Trungpa Rinpoche referred to as first thought, best thought. If something happens and the first thought you have about it seems to be, it might not be completely accurate or completely genuine. It might be have some cover-ups in it, but it's pretty close to what's actually happening. It's pretty close to responsibility for what is occurring. As I said, there might be still quite a bit of path quality going on there. In other words, still work to do on that. But yes, first thought, best thought. That doesn't mean believe it. More about it, Naveed, if you have it. If you have it.
Actually, nothing comes to mind right now. I'll get
Okay.
back to you later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Bowing.
the question. Good question. Thank you. Mozuku.
Mozuku bowing. When he says best thought, in what way is it helpful or useful? or
Okay,
good?
so let's break it down a little bit. So first thought, best thought was what he said. He didn't explain this ever. I never heard him explain. I'm not saying he didn't, I'm saying I was not there or didn't read it. But it's like the first thing that shows up has less attachments to it about right and wrong, it has less of the confusion of relative truth that is tied up with opinions of prejudice and conditioned response to things that are tied into the culture or to the way you've been treated since you were a child. So it has less of that. So the first response probably has quite a bit of genuine immediacy to it, that where you're just that shows up and you just receive it. You might have some thoughts about it, but they're very close to what's actually happening. So they're not so much a reaction to it. They might be about it. It might even be a thought like, what is that about? Like a curiosity kind of thing. Or it might be something like that. That doesn't seem right, but it might be closer than that's wrong. It might be there's a little bit of tentativeness there in the immediacy of the awareness. The awareness is you're already liberated. But as soon as there's a threat and tighten right down into a knot of me and my stuff, and if anybody comes along and pushes on that, you're likely to explode. Or maybe not explode, but implode. You can also do that. Just be a terrible person who can't control their emotions. So first thought, best thought would be more like, you have to remember, he's talking to meditators. This is not a public lecture to the society. Society's not ready to hear this teaching. Society's not ready to hear the teaching that I'm presenting to you right now. If somebody comes in here who just stumbles in here, very unlikely they'll even stay. They don't want to hear this. They want to hear things that are understandable. But they're also haven't spent hours and hours and hours looking at the nature of the mind and eventually making some kind of something in the mind stream where the grasping and pushing and pulling and passion, aggression, ignorance has become softer, and there's more of a tendency to receive this amazing world, this astonishing sacred world that has no profane anywhere. If you think that this is anything but sacred, if you think it's profane, then you're inventing that, and that's a defense. That's a justification for ego. There is no evil. Sure looks like it sometimes. Well,
Mozuku bowing. Is the first thought that you're talking about right now distinct from impulse in the sense of perception impulse?
there's some relationship there. You perceive something, you have an impulse, but perception and first thought would be closer to an area where you're receiving it, but you're also adding something to it, some kind of commentary onto it. Whereas just pure perception, nothing is done. You just receive it. Nothing is threatened because you're not separate from what you're perceiving. You actually are that. It's quite frightening if there's any kind of shrapnel of ego laying around on the ground after you realize your true nature and your self-centeredness blew up. There might be some chunks of you laying around that still, even though you might think you've realized, there may be some vibration, somewhere that you run into some kind of negativity, that part of your so-called self-centeredness starts to arise.
I believe it. It's not coming up. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Providing some questions from YouTube.
Mm.
Amaret Conrad, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right. How can I explain the value of awareness to my partner with regard to improving well-being? They say, what's the use in that? I want actions I can take.
Stop trying to do that. Train your mind yourself. Let them, allow them to be responsible for their life. Don't convince anybody of anything. You train your mind. You're actually fundamentally not separate from them anyway. To try to change, you're just buying into the whole duality that has everybody so confused. So just help them by listen to them, what they have to say. If they want action, then ask them about it, talk to them about it, get them to talk about it a little bit. But you train your mind. Long hours of sitting, holding still, watching the movement of the mind. This takes a long time. It's not going to happen in a few years. Chisho.
Back to the original title of the talk. What is it that you're trying to point by qualifying awareness as normal or as something else?
So what I'm endeavoring to do by doing that, maybe I should check with Bobby. But what I'm saying is just a ordinary receiving. You can receive what's happening from the sounds of birds outside the window. If somebody walks in and is really upset with you because you said you were going to do something and you slipped your mind and it's caused them to have 2 or 3 hours of extra work because you didn't do what you said you were going to do, and they're just really mad at you. That can be received with just ordinary awareness or a normal awareness, not with some kind of, you just receive it. Awareness doesn't produce a damn thing. It just receives. And the hard part of that, I could go on and on if you like, but the hard part of that is not just receiving it from the anger that's coming from the person, but also receive the retaliatory anger that's coming out of you that we call defensiveness. So as soon as you start to defend or explain, also you can go the other way where you become totally humble. Also bullshit. Don't do anything with it. Just receive it. Receive it. Don't look for some kind of resolution. The whole word resolution is just it's rife with obstacles of this and that and right and wrong and up and down and back and forth. You can do that in the courtroom, maybe. You can do that with the restorative justice, which I completely respect, and I think it's a great thing to have happening in this insane society, is to have where people get together and try to resolve their differences and get some resolution, of course, but not on the spiritual path. The spiritual path, you need to eat everything, no matter how bad it tastes. Receive, receive, receive. Aware, aware. Normal awareness. Normal awareness. Horrible crimes, normal awareness. Ordinary dispensation happening in this way, bringing groceries to someone or something. Normal awareness. This doesn't mean that you don't see the horror that is happening, but you don't add a lot of crazy chemistry on that about right and wrong. And you basically see deeply here, dependent origination going back. I mean, even to say it goes back centuries is a misunderstanding because time is unreal. Space is unreal. This is all an illusion. Your true nature is without a center, without a fringe. Did I get close to what you're looking for, Chisho, or you have a further question on that?
Honestly, I have not understood, meaning if you're trying to point to some extraordinary awareness or intuitive awareness, that's I'm still not able to get, because whatever you're describing is just awareness, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm just wondering about the qualification. Is there a need to qualify awareness? Bhavin?
Well, there must be, otherwise you wouldn't be asking this question. Reflect on what you just said. If I were talking to enlightened beings, I probably would just shut up. So if you're an enlightened being, then you probably wouldn't ask that question. Of course, she show you are an enlightened being. You know, he's not going to let me congratulate him for his enlightenment. Okay. You see what I'm saying? I would say anytime we have any kind of polarity happening of any kind at all, it's actually is showing us or me or you or anyone the way we take positions on things. And it's not about not doing that. It's about noticing that you do that, about being aware that you're doing that, so that eventually you can see the fundamental nature of what this is, where it is said by. Go ahead. You have more?
So by using the word normal, you're trying to point us to the way we react to that word.
Yes, I am. And anytime you name anything, you have its opposite. You have its otherness. If you name something, then you can't find the opposite to it. Then you can just find the things you haven't named that. That's the opposite. It's relentlessly complicated.
Deb Bowing.
Go ahead, Deb.
Back to the normal everyday awareness. In my everyday normal awareness, which I believe is relative to my circumstances.
Yes.
If I perceive that there's a threat to my child, how do I just receive it as a mother who wants to protect her child without outflow? Is there a way for me to even navigate that?
I don't know. Thank you. I don't know if there's a standard or a way to navigate it other than just the general ones we all try to use to protect our children. So we're still in a social milieu and structure that we're probably going to act in certain ways based on standards or based on your child is threatened. So you may still have to operate with that in a way that may seem unenlightened or something. But we need to start somewhere. So maybe in that situation, that's too strong of a situation where I can make some kind of a statement that's going to say, oh, this is the way you act enlightened. So it's not so much about that. It's trying to help you, encourage you to see that there is an awareness that can actually receive negativity without particular reaction to it, without outflow. So just receive. All of the sense fields, including the mind, receive. They receive. Even the mind does not generate thoughts. That's an illusion based on the tightness of dependent origination that is wrapped around a physical form called this biological organism that seems so intense and real and solid and separate. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Sokuzan.
Yeah.
We'll dedicate the merit. May the merit of this demonstration to all places, so that we in every sentient being may gather and realize the depths of way. Jivo san chi shifu, shi son bu sam ho
directions, the three times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokokoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.